Okay, right, again, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for another Discover Wildlife evening. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Dan Free, and I'm the General Manager here at Wildlife Worldwide and the Travelling Naturalist. Now, this evening, I am joined by the wonderful Helen Bryon, a good friend of mine and an excellent tour leader and travel consultant. So Helen's going to be taking us to Brazil this evening on a wonderful adventure. She's led numerous trips out there previously, knows the country extremely well, and we'll be talking to you about the trip that she led earlier this year. And then there's also a few of the other trips which we offer here at Wildlife Worldwide and the Travelling Naturalist. Now, as ever, there will be the opportunity to ask questions as we're going along, and you can do that through the Q&A and also through the chat facility. I'm pretty clued up on Brazil myself. I've managed it for about 10-15 years now. I used to lead trips out there as well, so I will possibly answer some of those questions myself, or if I think that they're relevant for everybody else, I'll put them to Helen at the end and we can discuss them then. Helen's got a few slides to get through. She's got some wonderful photos to show you. So we're expecting this to take probably around 40 minutes with a quick Q&A at the end. There will also be the opportunity, as ever, to request any travel plans that may be of interest. So they will all be listed in a poll at the end, and you can select any that you might like to receive. So without further ado, I think I should probably hand over to you, Helen.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dan.
I'll see you in a bit.
Right. Okie doke. So yes, first and foremost, I have got a number of slides to get through, and therefore I have a lot of thank yous. I have only provided a couple of the images that you're going to see in the next 40 minutes or so. This absolute donker of a peach-fronted parakeet was taken on our Best of Brazil trip that happened in July this year, and it was taken by a very talented photographer, Mr. Ted Smith. So he has actually provided almost all of the images for that particular trip that we'll be going through. So big thank you to him, and others have been provided by our in-house photographers, Brett Charman and Emma Healy, who's currently out in Brazil at the moment. So at least, well, 4 of us from the team have been out to Brazil this year. And my job for the next 40 minutes or so is to talk to you about the portfolio of small group trips that we offer out there. But of course, we can do tailor-made trips as well. So without further ado, what we're going to do is we're going to move onto a map of Brazil. And really, I would say from an ecotourism perspective, what has put Brazil on the map initially, quite some time ago now, was very much the Amazon, this large map of Brazil. I have used it once before, and therefore it is sort of signifying the key biomes that make up the huge country that Brazil is. Now, where the Amazon is concerned, we can put together river cruises on the Amazon, and your access point for those will generally be Manaus, which you can fly to from Sao Paulo down in the southeastern part of the country and shown on the map here. Increasingly, when we offer the Southern Amazon or the Amazon, it tends to be the southern areas. And that predominantly is down to the fact that you can then combine the Amazon with the incredible Pantanal. The north and the south Pantanal, this blue wetland area that you can see on your screens now, access through Cuiabá in the north and through Campo Grande in the south. In my humble opinion, the best safari experience outside Africa. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Bonito is another area that you can visit in the southern Pantanal, and we do so. We often do a lot of bolt-ons. So if people are visiting the Amazon and the Pantanal, or just one of them, they might want to see the natural wonder that is Iguazu Falls, and we can offer that as well. But in the center of your screens has just appeared a rather hallowed word, the Cerrado, or the Cerrado, as it's pronounced in Portuguese. And this is the basically savanna region of Brazil. Access through Brasilia, and really the reason to go and visit the Cerrado is to see this incredible creature. And we do this on our Best of Brazil group trip. That's the trip that I had the great fortune to lead for the very first time in July this year. I'm going back in July next year, and I'm pretty much counting the sleeps until I do. So maned wolf, if you would like to see maned wolf, the Cerrado is the area to do so. We were extremely fortunate, and we were able to view maned wolves on 5 out of 8 excursions that we spent in this incredible area. So imagine a fox on stilts. That's your maned wolf. Generally nocturnal, but most active crepuscular, so in the early mornings and towards sundown. And this is the habitat that you can expect to find them in. So this is a vast region. We're driving 5 hours outside Brasilia to get to a wonderful, wonderful pousada. This is a purpose-built ecotourism lodge, and it's called Pousada Trijunsal. It's set on a private reserve, the Trijunsal Reserve, and that translates into 3 basic or 3 junctions essentially, because it's border or on the border of 3 particular states. It's this lovely low-level terracotta lodge, absolutely teeming with bougainvillea, with local flowers, with colour. And you can then see that just behind it is nothing but bush. It's savanna. And that savanna is generally considered one of the most biodiverse on the planet. In the bottom right-hand side of your screen, you can see an observation tower. Brilliant place to watch sunrise or sunset, taking in the sights and the sounds. And really, it's the sounds when you get to this wonderful lodge that hit you first and foremost. It's very small. There's only 7 rooms. So when we arrive, you get out of the vehicle and you've got the sound of bird song. You've got basically, you've got choppy blackbirds. You've got an awful lot of sort of lizard activity. You've got this beautifully soft light coming in through the areas here. The rooms are gorgeous. You can get massages. The bathrooms are huge. And I was in the shower one day and I heard a load of rustling outside the window, and there was an armadillo. So we've searched very hard for said armadillo once I'd gone running out of the camp and letting all the guests know that there was an armadillo outside our room. But yeah, it was a wonderful sort of initial start to the holiday. Also, the first thing you'll notice, the hummingbirds hit you. You're in South America. You couldn't be anywhere else. This swallow-tailed hummingbird, they just are around the lodge, busy putting their beaks into all these beautiful flowers. Another of Ted's images, as most of these are, coming forward while I talk about this particular trip, the Best of Brazil. And over lunch when we arrived, all the meals are a la carte. They have a fresh garden, so it can come straight from farm to table. They do their own herbs. And they also have little feeding stations with pawpaw, with banana, with tomatoes. And that will bring in things like the curl-crested jay that you can see here. You've got black tufted marmosets that will be fighting those birds for the spoils. And they are just running through the lodge, and you know that you've arrived. You left London 48 hours ago. You're looking at guinea pigs just hoovering up the flowers. And even the doves in this part of the world are pretty. This is a scaled dove. Absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous creatures. You walk around the lodge, get your sort of, familiarize yourself with your new surroundings. You can only go as far as the lodge perimeter itself. There's a little road just on the other side of this pool here. And immediately we were seeing maned wolf tracks. This is unfenced. They're coming to the lodge, and there are a number of them that are known to have territories literally bang outside the lodge. That's a winner. So we basically, our focus during our entire time here are maned wolves. And you can see that this particular one is collared. So we work with a very, very good organisation that are involved in projects all over South America called On Safari. It's a very clever play on words. Onca, that you can see there, is the Latin genus for jaguar, Panthera onca. So going on safari, they do work with jaguars. They also work with maned wolves. So we were very, very eager upon seeing the spoor to jump on board, get onto the brand new vehicle, seat 9, our group size is smaller than that, and essentially off we go. It feels very familiar. If you've been to Africa a lot, you know, the dirt roads, the scrubby bushland, but the bird song is very, very different. And you will see some mammals, bearing in mind that this is a new initiative. This reserve has not been around very long. They have puma, they have jaguar, they have pampas deer, they have armadillo, but the wildlife there is not habituated particularly. So On Safari are working with the maned wolves. You may find other mammals a little thin on the ground. I think that's a fair expectation, but they are there. And with much wildlife viewing around the world, you just have to be in it to win it. You're there, you've got your bins glued to your face, and you see what you can find. Burrowing owls on our very first night safari. We were so close to this thing, you could not believe it. We pulled up next to it, we're all peering out at it, and this is another one of Ted's fabulous images, so he's captured it beautifully. We smelt the urine of maned wolf that night. We knew they'd been scent marking right next to the lodge, and we were super excited. And when we got back to the lodge, you can just see how beautifully simple it is. All natural materials, very quiet other than the bird song. And we went to sleep thinking, right, what is the next few days going to bring? Well, they bought a lot of birds. Again, all sorts of hummers, from your glittering bellied emerald through to your horned sun gem that we saw on safari, Campo flickers. We climbed the observation tower. We had king vultures going overhead. We had white-tailed hawks taking off from trees next to us as we were walking along looking at tracks. But obviously, maned wolf is our main focus. Now, one day, or 2 afternoons, in fact, the group split up. One of the excursions that you can do at this particular area, there's biking trails, there are bushwalks that we did, but there's also the opportunity to go looking for a dwarf caiman, Cuvier's dwarf caiman. And the boat that you go out on at night looking for these creatures really only takes 4, maximum 5 people. And our group size is normally 8. So we split up one afternoon, and whilst one vehicle went one way, the other vehicle went the other. And crikey, what an afternoon they had. Tear up those guidebooks. Apparently, maned wolves are really, really shy creatures. Well, not this one. This one was spotted in the road, scooted off into a field, came back into the road, and this is bordering an adjacent national park that we also visit during our stay. Then proceeded to not just sort of be a little inquisitive about the vehicle, but to run at the vehicle, keep coming, have a little bit of a chew by the side of the road. Just look at the size of those teeth while this image is on the screen. Good grief. Now, they're predominantly guinea pig eaters. Half their diet is guinea pigs, half of it tends to be fruit, so they're omnivores. But these are Ted's stills of that encounter. But that encounter actually went on for 7 to 8 minutes. And Sally Smith, another client on the trip, she managed to capture this. And I'm just going to be quiet and let the wolves do the talking. Phenomenal, isn't it? Quite simply phenomenal. This has got to be a once in a lifetime sighting. I watch this regularly when friends of mine ask me what actually even is a maned wolf. And it just makes me grin and shake my head in disbelief every time. Absolutely superb. So 5 out of 8, sort of activities, and we were able to come across maned wolves. So we were so incredibly lucky. But as I said, you've got to be in it to win it. So the Cerrado is where it's at. And other creatures that you can find there, crab-eating foxes, as you can see here, the dwarf caiman that I talked about earlier, so walks, biking if you wish, and vehicle safaris. That's how we get around in the Cerrado for our 4 nights there. So having experienced the Brazilian savannah, we do the 5-hour drive back down to Brasilia, slap bang in the middle of your screen there. We fly onto Cuiabá, the access point for the North Pantanal, but we don't go into the Pantanal. What we do at this point is we head north and we go into the southern Amazon for another 4-night stay. This I just thought was absolutely magic. The lodge that we stay in is only accessed from the water. So once you arrive into Alta Floresta at lunchtime, you're transported by minibus to about an hour to the river, and then you cross a very wide river, and then you reach the Cristalino Channel, and that you negotiate for around about half an hour or so to reach Cristalino Lodge. Being on the river, there are terns, there are swallows, ringed kingfisher, green kingfisher, other kingfishers and hingers, sunbittens, before and after. Wow, look at that for a wing pattern. It's unbelievable. Sunbittens are magic. They were highly sought after. We saw quite a few, so it was absolutely superb. And then when you actually sort of carrying on along the river in order to get to the lodge entrance, this was probably one of my favorite encounters on the entire almost 3-week trip. This is a Jeffrey's side-necked turtle. Sorry, it's absolutely not. It's a terrapin. It's a river dweller. Sorry. Jeffrey's side-necked terrapin. And the butterflies that you can see, the number of butterflies in the Amazon is simply astounding. And because we're visiting in the dry season, these butterflies need to get their salt intake. This they do from the soil, a bit of geophagia going on, but they also do it by drinking liquid from animal eyes, which is quite incredible. So this poor terrapin was basically being mobbed by hundreds. And I mean, you can only see a few there, but then they would flitter off again and come back in and flitter off again and come back in. And it was one of the most amazing things that it's one of my favorite memories of the entire trip. And eventually this terrapin just had enough, shook his head a huge amount and just dropped into the water below. And we carried on our way and reached the floating pontoon that signified that we were at the end of our journey and that we had arrived at the lodge. Now, Dan has a story about this pontoon. All I shall say is that he swam unwittingly with a giant anaconda, but if he wishes to elaborate on that, he can after the event. But what happens? Your boat pulls up to the little bridge that you can see in front of the pontoon. You then go up a few steps and you're in the Amazon. You walk towards the lodge and you're generally greeted by this little number. There are some resident curassows and they have just had offspring, and they're rather audacious. I love it. This thing just struts. It's fantastic. You're having your breakfast, you look down and there it is, having a bad hair day. Marvellous, absolutely marvellous. The lodge itself is beautiful. It is completely surrounded by the southern Amazon. It's all beautifully done. It's a short walk across to the accommodation units, which look a little like this. There are various different accommodation types and upgrades that are possible. And it's just really rather lovely, very charming. There's hammocks so you can just relax. There's a library, there's a reading room, and they do a fire pit every night. We had a walk around the grounds so we could see how far around the lodge we could walk, and immediately you're hit by colour, whether it's macaws, whether it's parakeets, whether it's 88 butterflies like you've got here, or this beautifully and very aptly named Amazon Beauty. But really, the Amazon is a place to take in the entirety of it. We don't have a target species here per se, not like the Cerrado where we're looking particularly for maned wolves. This is an experience, and that experience starts in the mornings with the beautiful mists that line the river. You've got a rufescent tiger heron here. This is another one of Ted's lovely shots. Very atmospheric. This is a shot from the lodge itself of tapir. Like any rainforest, the mammals are there, but you have to generally work quite hard to see them. There's primates galore. We arrived, we had capuchin monkeys going above us through the canopy. On walks, we would come across white-nosed saki monkeys. We saw tapir briefly. We saw neotropical otter briefly. We saw jaguar scat. So they're there, but you have to work a little harder to see them. So it's about taking in everything, but particularly the small stuff. Another favourite sighting again was coming across a boulder on an afternoon boat trip and just finding two perfectly in symmetry butterflies again at the eyes of a caiman. But in this case, it's just incredible to see, the insects, the flies, the bees, the wasps, etc. All the little stuff comes to the fore. And when those morning mists have burnt off, you'll find that because we're in the dry season, you have beautifully clear days. There's no mozzies. There are ticks at the time of year we go, but you can just pick them off. But there's no mozzies, no other bugs particularly. And as the blue skies are just there above you, you get things like this redneck woodpecker, nunbirds, all sorts. But really, for the Amazon, for me, it's about a gazillion shades and shapes of green. All the twists and turns in the tortured bark of tree trunks and the vines that are trying to strangle them. And on that, suddenly will settle a black butterfly and you wonder what it is, and then it opens its wings and it's iridescent blue and it's a blue morpho. And you're just like, wow, it's wonderful. This was an 800, I hope not was, this is an 800-year-old Brazil nut tree. We ate nuts from Brazil nuts, that literally, you don't go to Tesco's and buy them, you pick them up from the pod and you open it up and you eat them. And it's marvellous. It's absolutely wonderful. Walking along the forest trails and you've got little termite turrets that are just coming up from the trail, and your guide will just suddenly stop you and ask you to look down. You can't see a thing, and then they'll get a little stick and just gently prise open what is actually a spider, the home for a spider. And it's almost like an old film canister. You just flip the top off and you just lift that top bit up, and suddenly there's a perfect cylinder in which you'll find, some fantastic spiders. You've got peccaries. So there are two different varieties of peccaries that we can come across here. But another absolute highlight for me were the two canopy towers that you have on site. Absolutely worth the 288 steps to get up there. We went up for sundown on one day, and we went up for sunrise on 2 other mornings. We couldn't get enough of these towers. So they are quite sturdy, they're metal, and when you get up to the top of them, you're looking down into what I can only describe as millions and millions and millions and millions of heads of broccoli. It is unbelievable. And when you're up there, you know, we had a branch that broke off a tree. The resounding boom that reverberated through the area was quite something. You know, your guide has got scopes, so you're looking through the scope at the most beautifully coloured little birds. And in this case, Ted is pointing his camera at spider monkeys that you can see. And they're actually hundreds of meters away, but you can see them clearly in the canopy treetops. Another standout memory would be just going on a Sundowner River cruise. So forget your Zambezi type style. You're in a very, very small boat, and we came across nightjars. You'll shortly see an image of a ladder-tailed nightjar, but just after that, the sun, the colours in this sky just rose. This is an image from my mobile phone, so it's not particularly clear or crisp, I'm afraid. But if you can just imagine every possible shade of yellow going into tangerine, going into pink, going into indigo, and then suddenly the stars coming up beyond. And it was magical. And actually the stars were another key highlight for me. Yes, you're in a rainforest, so you look up and you're generally seeing a canopy. But we went on a night walk one night. There were only 4 of us that went. And we're walking through the forest in complete silence, and you've just got the frogs going crazy. You can hear the insects, and it's an assault to those senses. It's wonderful. What then happened, we were making our way towards the salt lick, and just before we got there, I was like, it looks like someone's smoking. You know, you've got your head torch on, and that's the only light that you've got. And we got to a tree, and there are a whole heap of fungi just around the trunk of the tree, and they started to release their spores. And I was utterly captivated. I tried to put a video onto this, but unfortunately it wouldn't load, but I'll see if I can do something about that in the future. But it literally just looked like the smoke of somebody in a 1920s club, you know, that curling through the air, but it was the spores being released. And once one piece of fungi did it, the next one did, and then the next one, and then the next one, and it was magical. We then got to the salt lick, and I kid you not, we had probably about 1.5 meters wide, as far as you could see, surrounding the salt lick, of leafcutter ants. There must have been millions of them silently going about their work that is so valuable in terms of breaking down the vegetation matter in the forest. It was just amazing. And then the icing on the cake, again, thank you, Ted. My phone decided, or my camera decided to steam up, of course. When you're with a harpy eagle, one of the most wanted eagles on the planet, and they're not seen hugely often. Of course, they're here. There are no working nests, for want of a better word, at present. So we of course you go there and you want to see a harpy. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that we would spend 25 minutes with one in full view. We were about to go for lunch. My mobile phone went, and it was our guide saying, Helen, can you get everybody to the dot now? I want to go looking for a harpy. And I thought, well, clearly a harpy must have been seen. You're not just going to go looking for one when you're due to go for lunch. So I ran around all the rooms, word spread like wildfire. We got everybody onto the boat. We just about maybe 30 seconds downriver from the lodge. And there it was. We could not believe it. Sitting about 1 meter above the water level, full view, no vegetation in its way. And these are the images that Ted got. We sat with it for, I kid you not, 20, 25 minutes. And then it decided to take off, and it flew across the river and resulted in this magical stream of images. And it was quite an emotional moment. Yeah, not afraid to say that. It was wonderful. It was stupendous. in fact. So that was the Amazon. I think I liked it. And I'm a big cat and dog girl, you know. What are these little critters doing? They're winding me in. That's what they're doing. So, leaving the Amazon behind us, we then moved down to Kioba. And rather than going into the northern Pantanal, we flew on and we flew to Campo Grande. And from here, we went across to Benito, and then we started to explore the southern Pantanal. And I'll talk a little bit about the differences between the North and South Pantanal whilst we're here. So the North Pantanal, accessed from Kioba, there's one road in and there's one road out. And at the bottom of that road, which is called the Transpantanera, is a little town called Porto Jofre. And from there, all of your safaris are done on the water. So if you want to see swimming jaguars on riverbanks, North Pantanal is where you need to go. Obviously, there's more wildlife than just jaguars, but that's generally the biggest draw card. The southern Pantanal, there are jaguars there, but game viewing here is done from a vehicle. So it's terrestrial. So you will see jaguars walking along rather than swimming. It's a very broad and very generalized description, but the southern Pantanal is also generally considered a little bit more reliable for giant anteater. That is a big pull for people visiting the south. Again, they're in the north. They're not seen quite so often because the south is much more open. So let's move on and explore that a little bit more. So from Benito, our overnight stop there, we stay in a lovely, lovely little guest house for one night. Toucans are flying around in the grounds, as are macaws, and it is only 1 hour away from a huge sinkhole, Barranca das Araras, which means the sinkhole or the hole of the macaws. And that is generally home to nesting pairs of red and green macaws. Weirdly, there is one random blue and yellow there as well. So when they fly together, it actually makes a really, really lovely contrast. It is superb to see these things flying at ground level, but I also particularly love this, another TED shot. These are buff-necked ibis, and a lot of ibis people sort of consider fairly ugly because they're bare heads often and that long probing beak. I love this shot. So on the walls of this sinkhole, you get the macaws, you get the buff-necked ibis, and we saw raptors, we saw quite a lot else as well. And I got very excited at seeing this, which is a blue-crowned motmot. My first ever motmot. I was busting to see one, and I never dreamt I'd see it at a sinkhole for the macaws. But there we go. So after that, we made our way a couple of hours up the road to Cayman Lodge. Cayman Lodge is probably the most polished of the lodges that we stay at. The service, the food, it's exceptional. The guiding, exceptional. I mean, it's exceptional, all of them, but Cayman for the group, I think, stood out really in terms of its overall experience. It's beautifully done. It's very comfortable. Hammocks in your rooms, what's not to love. And very atmospheric at night when a number of fire pits are lit and you can hear the sounds. It's surrounded by a lagoon. So it's really, really very lovely. My first impression was not of the lodge. It was with hyacinth macaws. They make a lot of noise, but they're also stunning. And they're often on clients' wish lists when you're going to the Pantanal. They actually nest in the lodge. So, well, in the grounds of the lodge. So, it's, again, fairly reliable. And there's actually a hyacinth macaw breeding project going on, and an NGO that is on site doing work with the hyacinth macaws. So, there's great beauty, but there's also great conservation work being done at the same time. You don't have to stay in the lodge to see them. We also saw a whole heap of these. We were trying to get to a nice spot for sundown, and we kept getting waylaid by sightings. You can't just drive past a number of hyacinth macaw like this, perfectly reflected, and just go, actually, no, we're going to go for the sunset. So we managed to get both. As you leave the lodge, It's quite manicured just around the lodge. The grounds are absolutely beautiful. There are capybara and also a couple of unexpected surprises. So this is literally as you leave the lodge, you can see our vehicle. And if you can see in between these clients here slithering towards them, and we only knew it was there because it was getting mobbed by a whole load of birds that were making a right racket. There is a close-up coming up of a snake if anybody wishes to move away. But I, for one, never thought that I would be lying on the ground with a snake coming at me head on, but we all did. It was beautiful. This anaconda, we saw 2 during our stay, and it was an absolute beauty. So, but we're in Brazil, we're in the Pantanal. What's our focus? Well, of course, it has to be jaguars. Other wildlife, of course, but it is really jaguars that are the big pull. And as Dan told me before my very first visit, just look for the leopard on steroids H. And again, that's how I use them or describe them to most people. They are chunky, they are powerful, and they are fabulous, absolutely fabulous. So this is, again, just a shot from my mobile overlooking the lagoon. You wake up in the morning, you're full of expectation. And another key reason, as I've mentioned, to go to the Southern Pantanal is to look for giant anteater. So we got up in the morning, and our plan for the morning was to look for giant anteater. As soon as you start moving around in the reserve, you are coming across some fences, as you can see here. So this black-hooded parakeet is sitting on a fence. It's a mixed use land. There's some grazing in the area. So you're seeing grazing next to wildlife, and the 2 are cohabiting, and it's working, which is great. So the bird life continues to be astounding, from violaceous trogons, more hummingbirds once again, plenty of bird life, including raptors as well, with this black-collared hawk and this stunning shot of a savanna hawk. And you're moving through the reserve, you're in swampland 1 minute, it's all entirely wet, and the next minute you're driving through what looks like an English meadow. These very pink trees that you can see, they're called piaba, and they flower after a cold front. So you do get fairly regular cold fronts sweeping up from the southern tip of South America and making their way up to the Pantanal. So that's something we will always tell you to be aware of. It could be 30 degrees one day, and it could be 12 the next. But we spent the entire morning looking for giant anteater, not a sausage, literally not a sausage. But it was amazing. We had all these birds to distract us. We had a wonderful hyacinth macaw flyby. So we then continued on to lunch back at the lodge. And when we went out that afternoon, if I say that we saw 10 giant anteaters, I'm sure you will believe me. So again, wonderful images. We walked with one individual who was walking along the airstrip. So we drove along the airstrip and got out the vehicle and spent half an hour walking with it, which was really rather marvelous. They are just such odd but fabulous creatures with that huge bushy tail. And we were lucky enough to come across a mother with a little one hanging on her back. She can't pick it up because she walks on her knuckles and she's got hugely long nails. So they just climb up naturally onto the mother's back. The mother was a little shy. The little one was a little shy here. You can see it's just hiding its head. So we left them to it, but we had a bumper afternoon of giant anteaters, which was fantastic. More babies as well. There are various different types of deer, brocket deer, as you can see here. There are primates and black and gold monkeys, and but of course jaguar. We were so fortunate. We saw them at night. We saw cubs. We saw them on a kill, and you can't get enough of jaguar, really. We saw one in a tree pretending to be like its African cousin. They're much bolder. They're not shy in any way, shape, or form. So, yeah, you don't go looking for leopards. They are jaguars. They're big. They're king of the jungle. They have no predators. They have no fear. So they behave very, very differently to leopards. So there you have it. 4 nights in the Cerrado, 4 nights in the Amazon, 4 nights in the Southern Pantanal, and that is our best of Brazil trip that operates every summer in July. Amazing, quite simply amazing. But I'm supposed to tell you about all the other small group trips that we have as well. So next up is our Brazil Big 5 photo safari. And so thank you, Ted and Sally, for your images on Best of Brazil. Now I'm going to thank Mr. Brett Charman, who a lot of you I'm sure will be more than familiar with, for his images of the recent trip that he led last month out to Brazil. This concentrates on the Pantanal, and it's a photographic departure, so Brett is there to enhance your skills, to help you get the best out of your camera. Doesn't matter what your current skill level is, you will leave having learned something and enhancing your skill. That's the main thing. So photographic focus, and it goes to the North Pantanal and to the South Pantanal. So jaguar, down to the south, giant anteater, and all that other wonderful stuff in between. So thank you, Brett. Here are some of your amazing images coming up. I love this one of it snoozing, but I love this one even more. Again, just look at those teeth. This is the North Pantanal. You're on a boat, you're looking up at the riverbank. That could only be the North Pantanal. The big 5 that we are looking for: jaguar, giant river otter, tapir, giant anteater, and finally hyacinth macaw. So those are the focus animals. And again, starting in the North Pantanal, so you get those water shots of the jaguars, of them curling up in trees on trunks, looking down at the water, wondering where their next meal will come from, which is generally caiman and or capybara. These images are just wonderful. Thank you so much, Brett. They just make me want to go back. But there's a supporting cast in the North Pantanal: caiman, the Yakari caiman. You've got ocelot. There are hides in some of the lodge, or one of the lodges that we use on the way down. Howler monkeys. This has actually come from Emma Healy, who is out in Brazil as we speak. So these have actually been WhatsApped to us. So if they're not as clear cut as some of the other images have been, that is why. But yeah, you've got howler monkeys, gorgeous. Another one of Brett's, rufescent tiger heron. I just love this shot. Love it, love it, love it. You've got grey-necked wood rail when you're out on the river. And I particularly love this shot of Brett's from last month. Gira cuckoos. Oh my word, isn't that just absolutely wonderful? Also, red-legged seriema. It's like the South American version of a secretary bird, and they strut. So fabulous. But again, once you get down to the South Pantanal, which is what they do, they're looking for giant anteater. They also go to Barraca da Sarara. So once again, you've got your yellow and blue macaw, but generally it's the red and greens that you're going to get here. And a couple more from M that have literally just come in on WhatsApp. Beautifully atmospheric shot of a screamer. And I love this, putu. Absolutely fabulous creatures. I mean, where does the tree end and the bird begin? Absolutely marvelous. Another one, not such a great day for the iguana, but a good day for the jaguar. Another one of M's lovely shots. Beautiful tapir that's just come in from her. And I particularly love this one of the tree porcupine. It should be in the tree, not in the roots. But how do you take that photo? How do you focus? And that's why you need a photographic trip if that floats your boat. You can also combine the North and the South Pantanal on a non-photographic trip. The photographic opportunities will be there, absolutely, but rather than being led by a photographer, it will be led by a local naturalist. This one actually starts in the Southern Pantanal, ends in the North Pantanal, but it's another option, and combining the two really is a winner. And then finally, you'll be so pleased. So 45 minutes, I'm only 5 minutes over, that's not bad. We've got our wonderful wildlife of the Pantanal trip. This is a 13-night itinerary. We fly you into Sao Paulo, we get a connecting flight onto Cuiabá, and we get you straight down that Trans-Pantanera to a lodge. And so you leave London one evening, the following afternoon you're there, and you're surrounded by caiman and surrounded by marmosets and surrounded by birds and black vultures and everything else, all the wonderful creatures that call this area home. And we spend 3 nights at a lodge, well, 2 nights initially, along the Trans-Pantanera. We then head down to the river, spend 4 nights in quite a remote lodge. Portageoffrey itself can get quite busy. And I think, again, it's a good expectation to have set. There can be a number of boats looking for the jaguars. So by staying 40 kilometres upriver, you have the capacity to have sighting to yourself, but you're close enough to come down where there are more eyes on the river if you need it. I did this trip in 2018. It was my introduction to Brazil's wildlife, and I think this is a corker. So after 4 nights on the river, you head back up the Trans-Pantanera for another 3 nights in the lodge, and it's a brilliant mix of walking safaris, boating safaris, vehicle up and down the Trans-Pantanera, frequent departures, at least once a month between June and October. There is no bad time to go. The dry season is when it's accessible. So that's why we operate June to October. If you go later in the season, it will be hotter. So there's no change in terms of the wildlife. The wildlife is always there. Your viewing potential is always very, very good. It just gets hotter. And by hotter, I'm talking mid-30s, sometimes a bit higher. But then a cold front will come in and down it drops. So, but it's a brilliant introduction to Brazil's wildlife, or to the Pantanal's wildlife, and that's why we set it up. And it's one of our most popular and most enduring trips. And we can extend it. You know, if you wanted to go and look for maned wolves, if you wanted to go to Iguazu or go to the Amazon, easily done. And that, in a nutshell, and in 48 minutes, sorry, slightly over, is Brazil, in a nutshell. I've just said that again. Oh dear. Shut up, H.
That was outstanding.
Sorry, you wanted an early night.
HB, you're just the most wonderful storyteller. I love it. I find it so therapeutic just to sit back and watch you, and with the images as well. Special thanks to Ted, incidentally, for his wonderful images. It really was a wonderful talk this evening. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Helen has obviously just talked to us about a few trips, and if any of those are of interest, I will just launch the poll so that you can request any of those trips that Helen just mentioned. So I don't know if you want to summarize them just very quickly there, Helen.
Yeah, okay, so Best of Brazil is my trip, so maned wolf and Amazon and Southern Pantanal. Wildlife of the North and South Pantanal is the non-photographic led trip that goes to both the North and the South. The wildlife of the Pantanal is just to the north, which is the brilliant introduction, and we can extend it. And Brazil's Big 5 photo safari are the ones that have been led so far by Brett and Emma. And next year, 2 departures, they will both be led by the wonderful Ben Sutcliffe. We're keeping it all in-house. So, yeah, if you want the tuition of a professional photographer, then the Big 5 photo safari is for you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Not surprisingly, lots of wonderful comments coming in for you, HB. Lots of praise, as usual. But we also have a couple of quick questions as well, which may be of interest to people. So one of them was just regarding the photographic opportunities on these trips. Obviously, the Big 5 is a dedicated photographic trip, but I think it's fair to say that the photographic opportunities are very good on all of these. We're just not necessarily spending hours sitting in one spot, waiting for something to emerge or waiting for a bird to fly off or whatever. That's the key difference.
Exactly.
Fair enough?
Yeah. I mean, I know people who literally just go and take their mobile phone and get the most amazing pictures. So the wildlife, especially in the North Pantanal, because you can get so close to the jaguars. And also in the South Pantanal, I was absolutely gobsmacked at how close we were able to get to giant anteater. So, a mobile is sufficient if you just want to sit there and just take it all in. Otherwise, a little point and shoot. I do have a DSLR. I'm just not particularly good with it.
No, that's not fair. You're a good photographer, HB. I would
but
also
I'm not a photographer. No, I'm a wildlife enthusiast. I'm just making up words now. I can't speak.
I should also add, guys, not everybody is a photographer. I'm not a photographer myself, and with the non-photographic trips, it is important to us that we get the balance right. So this is why we're saying that they're not dedicated photographic trips. We will try and give you opportunities, but it should not be at the expense of other people. So that's the crucial thing. You won't see that level of dedication that you would on a dedicated photographic trip. So that's the significant difference, really. We're there to cater for everybody, mammal enthusiasts, bird enthusiasts, and also those photographers.
All-rounders.
Absolutely. Another question that actually relates to the wildlife of the Pantanal and also the Big Five trip, and that's the success of the ocelot hide, which you didn't actually mention tonight, but I don't know if you're able to expand on that quickly.
Yeah. No, so I very briefly, just when we were talking about Emma's shots, there was one of an ocelot there. So there is one lodge that is situated on the Trans-Pantanera in the North Pantanal. And at sundown, they can take people across to a hide that they have for an ocelot. It's not a guaranteed sighting. I personally, when I went in 2018, didn't see ocelot, but we would estimate around a sort of, based on our groups, around a 60 to 70% success rate. So you've got a good chance of seeing ocelot. There are other smaller cats as well, like margay, and I mean, I think I'd just spontaneously combust if I saw any others. Really, it was very exciting. But yeah, I mean, there's just it's outstanding how much there is to see. Even if you don't think you're into birds, when you see that curassow come and meet you at Cristalino Lodge, you're just like, wow. And then you just look at this image here and you're like, wow. Yeah, it's amazing. Brazil is fabulous.
It is. I'd also second your opinion that it's the best safari outside of Africa for me. Like the Pantanal specifically, it's outstanding. I've been lucky enough to be there. Well, travel there about 5 or 6 times now, and it never fails to deliver. There's a whole host of other mammals and birds that we haven't even mentioned tonight, which just light the place up. It's incredible. We're going to return just to the best time to go question again, HB. This one comes up a lot, doesn't it? Everybody wants to know the best time to go. And I just wanted to add my thoughts here. I've always traveled in June and July because I don't like it too hot, and I've had outstanding sightings at that time. Tends not to be quite so busy in June as well. It can get quite busy the back end of July into August, and certainly in September. So I really like the early part of the season. Yes, the water levels might be a little bit higher, which means that the jags might be a bit higher up the banks. Then there's not so many of the sandy kind of spits, exposed, which you have later in the year. But because it is cooler, I've always found that the cats to be a bit more active at that time. Later in the year, when it's 35, 40 degrees, potentially September, October, they can be a bit more lazy. That said, they're often in the water and stuff, so that's quite interesting. But to suggest that there's no bad time to go is correct. It's just changes very slightly. And my biggest thing is just to travel at a time when you're comfortable with the temperature, because you're going to be out in the field a lot. You are exposed in the boats when you're out doing the boat safaris in the North Pantanal. And for me, 40 degree heat, 35 degree heat, that would be a bit much for me. So I like the early season.
It all comes down to your thermostat. There's no bad time to go. There are probably more bugs and it's hotter the later in the season you go. So yeah, September, October. Heat personally doesn't bother me, but yeah, you've got to go with what's comfortable for you. But the wildlife, I would say, is reliable throughout that period when the group trips operate, which is June to October.
Definitely. Also, I would say in October as well, a lot of the Pantanal was dried out at that point, so it's not such an obvious wetland experience. You've got the rivers and stuff running through it and the channels, and the wildlife congregates there, similar to Africa. But you haven't got that classic kind of open wetland experience, which you might have, for example, in June, July, and August. So that's just something else to bear in mind.
Yeah.
You're going to have to forgive me. There's some more questions coming in here. How easy is it to access the boats in the North Pantanal?
Very. They have a little. They have you walk onto a pontoon, and as long as you can then step into a boat, there will be people to help you. Not an issue. You don't have to be particularly mobile. There's not a lot of walking involved, you know, in the North Pantanal. So it's getting in and out of a boat. That's literally it.
That's absolutely right. And also another question here, a really good question. The size of the groups across the various tours.
Yeah, so best of Brazil is 8, plus me, because the vehicles can't take any more. The Pantanal trips, maximum 12. The photo big 5, I think, is only 6, isn't it? Because we don't generally do more than that with one photographer.
It's either 6 or 8, possibly, because
Yeah.
we've got the local guide as well. I'd need
Yeah,
to check
yeah.
that. But
it's certainly small to ensure that everybody gets tuition, you know, built in and on a one-on-one level. Yeah.
yeah, crucially, everybody, even with the Wildlife of the Pantanal, where it's a maximum group size of 12, everybody's got a window seat. And 12 might sound like quite a large group for wildlife, but because of the openness of the terrain and this wetland and the boats and everything, it actually works very well. So, you know, that, for example, we wouldn't do a group size of 12 in the rainforest, where it's more enclosed, where the habitat's more challenging. But certainly in the Pantanal, you've got this massive open landscape. 12 works nicely. It works well with the boat, works well with the safari truck that we use and stuff. So that's the answer to that one. Cool. I think I've got through the questions, HB. So that's it. Let these guys crack on with their evenings and go and have their dinner. I'll end the poll now. Thank you to everybody who's requested travel plans. We will follow up on that tomorrow. Just checking I haven't missed any questions. No, that seems to be it. So all we need to do is just to thank you for joining us this evening.
I always have to have a prompt for this. Hold on. It's because I haven't touched the PowerPoint for a wee while. It would just take a second or two before it will move on. There is one more slide to come, and it's a very important slide because it gives you a discount.
Oh, right. Okay, that is important. Yeah. Okay, so guys, we will obviously make reference to this tomorrow as well when we're sending out the travel plans. But as Helen suggests, there is a discount available on any of the Brazil trips which were featured tonight. So make a note of that. Or as I say, it will be in the email that we send you tomorrow. And do join us next week as well, when Helen's going to be talking to us about India. And that's a fabulous talk. That's not just tigers. That's all of India and its wildlife, from snow leopards to tigers to Asiatic lions to leopards. Striped hyena, so much good stuff. So we can look forward to that next week. Okay, I think on that note, should we say good night?
Good night from me. Good night from him.
Thanks ever so much, HB, and thank you for joining us, guys. Hopefully we'll see you next week. Take care. All the best.
Thanks everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.